Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So in this particular segment, we'll be talking about casting yard. So previously we spoke about segments. So those segments are actually manufactured or it has been prepared in this particular location that is called as a casting yard. So let's see what this definition is called. A casting yard is a confined space where all the concrete structures like segments, eye girders or beams, etc. are cast in. So the casting yard brings factory controlled production techniques, efficiency, quality control, and time saving to bridge the construction. So this is a pretty much self-explanatory definition, but I would like to give it to you in even more simpler terms. So those segments are basically manufactured at this particular casting yard. So their movements, how exactly it has been transported from casting yard towards the actual site location. All of these particular details, even in the casting yard. What about the layout of the whole casting yard? And what are the methods of casting yards that has been there? All of these particular details, let's talk about it in this particular session. So over here, casting is nothing but there is these structures which will be kept ready, okay? And at the actual work location, you will have to transport all of these particular structural units to go and install them there. So there, the back end work, that is with respect to when this piling work or this pier works is happening, parallelly, these segments have to be kept ready so that when it reaches the pier cap head state, that time these segments will be all ready to go and just fix it up there. So that is the whole reason, in order to save time, these particular casting yards are there. Over here, all the precast elements will be made. So one example was segments. Then there is something called as eye girders. Eye girders are nothing but they are the whole beams that you can see under these metro stations. So sometimes there is the main traffic that is going on the road, and then you have the metro station above. So below you can see so many beams going in. They are called as the eye girders. And sometimes there is these thick beams which has been there. All of these can be, these are all precasted elements that is actually made at casting yard. So this is where the casting yard actually comes into the picture. So now let's see what we have to have with respect to this requirements of the casting yard. So coming to the requirements of the casting yard definitely requires a huge amount of space, because in one segment you will have to be working out for all of the reinforcement works, the bending of the reinforcement works. On the other side, you will have a batching plant that is set up. So there you will be taking all of your concrete items. And then once all of the concreting of these particular structural units has been made, storage of it, stacking of all of these particular structural units also takes some space. And for transportation, there should be some amount of space. That is the reason minimum of 25 acres of land is actually required for a casting yard. So that is minimum. So this actually varies between 25 to 40 acres of land. And usually you get such huge amount of land usually in the outskirts a little. So that is where these clear approaching roads also comes into the picture. Now, when there is a huge land that you have occupied it for the casting yard, definitely these are all going to be temporary land that you will be like maybe leasing it on to stack all of your materials of the construction. So that is why there will be a lot of to and fro movement that will be happening with respect to the casted elements, the casted structural units. So they should all be transporting using these particular approaching roads. So from the main road till the casting yard, definitely there should be clearance in this particular road. There shouldn't be any obstacles, because again, these structural units which we would have actually manufactured at the casting yard, that damage shouldn't be happening. That is why there should be a clear approaching road. And then coming to environmental conditions, we should have a really ideal environmental conditions, because see, for all these because see, for all of the precasted structural unit elements, right? So they are all not stored in any covered regions. So it is actually stacked outside in the outer space only. So there are very rare cases where it will be under a covered region. So that is why where it has a heavy rainfall, or if there is near some factory where there might be any chemical reaction that can take place, all of those regions should be avoided as much as possible. It should definitely have an ideal what is that environmental conditions, because when it comes to the raw materials, say for example, you will be having bulk amount of cements or the cement bags or the aggregates that it will be stored. Just in case if it is a very heavy rainfall region, then there is no possibility that you can actually protect all of these construction materials. That is why ideal environmental condition actually has to be considered. And then definitely all the basic facilities must be provided, because there will be a lot of engineers, there'll be site engineers, there'll be laborers, there'll be project managers. So once in a while, there'll be, approaching for all the inspectional purposes. So all the basic facilities, like the drinking water facilities, the minimum amount of electricity that has to be supplied there. And apart from that, the washroom facilities, keeping all of these things aside, even canteen facilities. So these things have to be considered, because from almost 12 hours a day, most of the site engineers and civil engineers, in spite of, irrespective of which position they are actually been there, they've been working for such a long time. Definitely all of these basic facilities has to be provided. And in emergency cases, which is pretty obvious, we will have to be considering all the medical treatment centers. So there should be basic first aid items that should be stored in the site offices, or even if possible, if it is nearby, it is better if they have an emergency medical doctor as well. So these are the basic requirements that is required in the casting yard. So next, moving forward, let's see what are the methods of casting that takes place. There are two main methods where the casting actually takes place. One is called as the long line method, and one is called as the short line method. So now roughly you have an idea about the segments that we were talking about. So these segments over here, you can see these are the segments, the segment covers. These are the segments that has been casted. So now when it comes to long line method, there is going to be one fixed bottom that is called as the bed. See, this one fixed bottom that has been there, this is going to be like a whole trail. And here only multiple segments, especially when it is a uniform segments that is happening, for usually one whole span segments will be casted in that fixed bed only. Okay, so this bed is going to be fixed and they have their own scaffoldings. So a series of them will be there. Multiple segments will be casted over here when it is a uniform segment. That is, all the dimensions of it are very similar. That is when the long line method comes into the picture. Then we have something called as the short line method. So short line methods are individual units. So in special cases, I have told when there is a curve that is happening. So only the curved region segments will have shorter length on one side, and it will have a longer length on the other side, because the whole curve is going to take place. That is like matching all of these puzzles together. So that can't be done uniformly, right? When it is one straight line that is happening, definitely that time it can be, that time long line method can be adopted. But when it comes to short line, it is like a mix and match puzzle. So when one particular segment is actually casted over here, the immediate next match for it only should be casted right immediate for that. That's why they don't have a fixed bed over here. This is the ground that you can see. This is one bed for this particular segment, and this is another bed for another individual segment. This is how the short line and the long line methods are with respect to the various methods of casting. So now let's have a look at what is the layout in a casting yard. So this is a generalized picture with respect to the layout. Ideally, any casting yard definitely looks very similar to this. So here you can see at the entrance, actually, this is the rebar cut shop. Rebar cut shop is where most of the BBS works, most of the reinforcement works, the bar works, all of these things takes place. So storage of all of the bars, marking of them, the location of them, the bending of these bars, All of those work will be taking place over here. And then we have the open casting yard. In this open casting yard is where these gantry cranes are actually installed, so that the movement of either the reinforcement work or the scaffolders or the finished units will be made in the to and fro movement. So this is the actual open casting yard. This is the office region, that is the site office region, because where you will be monitoring, you will be scheduling, you will be controlling all of the activities that is happening in the casting yard. So that is where a site office is definitely required for all the engineers to sit and plan about the things that is actually taking place at a casting yard. And then we have the batching plant. Batching plant, definitely it is put in one corner of the site, because a lot of the concrete that has been manufactured has to be transported here and there. So we can't really fix it in the center. That is why it should be controlled from one corner of the site. And then we have all of the storage area. This is where the complete stacking takes place. So stacking is a word that has been used. So the whole of this stacking of all the segments takes place. Sometimes over here it is segments. And then that particular division can be done. See, over here what happens, there'll be a lot of movement that will be taking place. The one which shall be taking a little later will be stored in the bottommost layer, and then the one which has to be transported very early will be stored at the topmost layer. That is when, using the cranes, we can definitely transport. Now see, this is an entrance. Over here the actual truck comes, the transporting truck of these segments. So the ones which is there above, it will be easy to place on them, and then it will move forward. So this particular picture also, if you actually observe over here, this yellow color, so the person who has clicked this picture is standing on top of one gantry crane. So this is one gantry crane, and this is a overall view of how a casting yard actually looks like. So by this, we come to the end of the casting yard. So by now, definitely you'll be having a complete idea on how the piling work takes place and how the pier works takes place. Moving forward, how these segments are being made, in which area is it made, exactly it is in the casting yard. And in today's section, we have really spoken about where these casting yards should be located, what are the different methods that is there, minimum requirements that is required, how a whole layout of the casting yard looks like. All of these things have been covered. So I hope by now you have a complete ideology, just in case if you are entering into any metro project construction, or if you're already one of the site engineers who's working for one of the metro projects. These are the basic things that you will have to definitely keep in mind, and it will help you forward in planning your things, and you'll be aware of what is the next stage that will be coming by. So by this, we have come to the end of the casting yard and the end of this particular section. So let's see, we will be in the further in the future section. I mean, just cut this part. Okay. Going forward, we will be talking about the various components, what are the civil and the finishing work that is there with metro stations. All of these things also should be coming into the picture. So we will be talking about all of these in the next section. Okay, so till then, thank you so much.